The glittering lights of Hollywood, the roaring applause of sold-out stadiums, and the global prestige of international awards often create an illusion of seamless perfection. We see icons who have conquered the summits of music, film, sports, and public service, assuming their paths were paved with absolute certainty. Yet, behind the public triumphs lies a deeply complex, quiet struggle that millions of people around the world navigate every single day. It is the silent, often painful journey of navigating a mixed heritage in a world that constantly demands people to fit neatly into singular, predefined boxes. When your bloodline spans across continents, oceans, and vastly different cultural landscapes, the question of identity becomes a lifelong labyrinth rather than a simple statement of fact. This report delves into the deeply personal, raw, and transformative experiences of some of the world's most recognizable figures who exist at the intersection of multiple worlds. They are the individuals who have been told they are too much of one thing, yet not enough of another, forced to build their own foundations when societies refuse to offer them a place of true belonging. Before we uncover these profound stories of resilience and self-discovery, please take a quick moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dive investigative reports. The human experience of growing up biracial or multiracial is rarely uniform, but the emotional echoes across different lives are remarkably consistent. In a society that heavily relies on visual categorization, those of mixed ancestry often find themselves scrutinized from the moment they step outside their front doors. For some, the household itself is a beautifully rich tapestry of traditions, where foreign languages, diverse culinary practices, and contrasting familial values coexist harmoniously. Within the safety of the family home, identity is rarely questioned. It is simply lived and felt. However, the true friction almost always begins at the threshold of the outside world. Whether it is the school playground, a neighborhood grocery store, or the cold lens of the entertainment industry, the public arena frequently demands a simplified narrative. It forces individuals to answer an implicit, sometimes aggressive question: which side are you on? This pressure to choose can alienate young minds, creating an intense sense of isolation that persists well into adulthood. For many celebrated figures, childhood was defined by a distinct feeling of being an outsider among peers. When a child's appearance or family structure does not align with the immediate community's demographic, the resulting alienation can leave permanent marks. Classmates, driven by a lack of understanding or societal conditioning, often weaponize these differences through teasing, exclusion, or microaggressions. Simple daily routines, such as a parent picking up their child from school, can suddenly become a source of immense anxiety. The stark contrast between a child's physical appearance and that of their mother or father can trigger confusion and cruelty from peers who lack the vocabulary for nuance. In those formidable years, the desire to blend in, to be entirely unremarkable, is incredibly powerful. Yet, for a mixed-race child, blending in is often an impossibility, forcing them to develop an internal armor far earlier than their contemporaries. As these individuals grow and enter their respective professional fields, the challenges do not disappear. Instead, they merely evolve into systemic obstacles. The creative and entertainment industries, despite projecting an image of progressive inclusivity, have historically struggled with individuals who occupy what is often described as the gray zone. Casting directors, talent agents, and marketing executives frequently operate on rigid archetypes, looking for faces and backgrounds that fit very specific, traditional molds. A multiracial artist entering an audition room is regularly met with paradoxical critiques, being told they are not dark enough for one role, yet not fair enough for another. This constant rejection based on an arbitrary meter of authenticity can lead to deep frustration and professional stagnation. It forces a unique kind of imposter syndrome, where professionals begin to question their own worth and legitimacy within their own cultures. The phenomenon of being white passing introduces an entirely different layer of internal and external conflict. Individuals who inherit features that allow them to navigate society with perceived racial privilege often carry a heavy burden of unseen guilt. They find themselves privy to casual prejudices voiced by people who assume everyone in the room shares the same background. Simultaneously, they face skepticism from their own minority communities, who may view their experiences as less authentic or devoid of the hardships faced by those with more prominent ethnic features. This creates a painful disconnect, where the individual grieves a lack of connection to their heritage while acutely recognizing the societal advantages their appearance affords them. It is a delicate balance of acknowledging privilege while privately processing the microaggressions and cultural erasure that still occur behind closed doors. Conversely, those who explicitly embody their minority heritage face the immediate, unvarnished realities of systemic bias. Regardless of their multiracial background, the world reacts to what it sees, and the nuances of a complex family tree are easily erased by the biases of a stranger or the profiling of an institution. For these individuals, their mixed heritage cannot act as a shield against discrimination. They are viewed and treated through a singular lens, forcing them to fully align their identity with the community that shares their visible struggles. This reality creates a profound sense of pride in their roots, but it also underscores the rigid, uncompromising nature of external societal perceptions. The journey through these contrasting experiences ultimately shapes these global icons into fierce advocates for nuance, driving them to use their immense platforms to challenge the very definitions of identity, representation, and belonging on a global scale. The reality of navigating these intersecting worlds becomes vividly clear when we examine the specific, deeply personal testimonies of those who have lived it under the intense glare of the public eye. Across different industries and generations, the precise details of these experiences reveal a striking pattern of cultural dissonance and emotional resilience. In the world of contemporary music and entertainment, figures like Olivia Rodrigo have spoken openly about how rich cultural traditions manage to trickle down through generations despite the geographical distances from their ancestral homelands. Growing up in a household where the echoes of Filipino heritage were preserved through traditional foods like lumpia during family holidays, the young artist experienced a quiet foundational connection to her roots. Yet, even when the home environment is incredibly supportive and rich with heritage, the external world introduces a completely different set of rules. The contrast between a private cultural sanctuary and a rigid public perception is a boundary that almost every multiracial individual must eventually cross. For many, this crossing happens during childhood, leaving behind memories of profound confusion and a desperate search for identity. The musical artist Saweetie has detailed how growing up biracial meant navigating two cultures that felt completely night and day from one another. Raised around vastly different familial environments due to her mother's Filipino descent and her father's black descent, she frequently felt entirely out of place as a young girl. These internal struggles, while deeply painful at the time, eventually fostered an extraordinary level of empathy and sensitivity toward the cultures of others, allowing her to understand that no single group of people communicates or perceives the world in the exact same way. This early exposure to cultural duality can become a powerful tool for global communication, but the path to achieving that clarity is rarely smooth. And it often requires surviving intense social isolation from multiple sides. The sting of exclusion is often felt most acutely when it comes from the very communities an individual logically feels they belong to. Former professional football player and current coach Hines has shared the immense difficulty he faced while trying to find his identity as a child of Black and Korean heritage. Growing up, the social divides were unyielding and incredibly cruel. The Black children refused to associate with him because he had a Korean mother, while the Korean children and white children similarly ostracized him because of his Black heritage. It was an environment where friends were nearly impossible to find, creating a profound sense of total abandonment until he discovered the world of sports, an arena where color suddenly ceased to matter and performance became the ultimate equalizer. He eventually recognized that while his mother's native culture was beautiful and deeply loved, it possessed a rigid dark side regarding mixed-race individuals, prompting him to use his subsequent success to shed a bright light on those prejudices. This specific struggle for recognition within Asian societies is a recurring theme for many high-profile figures who do not fit the traditional, homogeneous visual expectation. Tennis champion Naomi Osaka, who is of Haitian and Japanese heritage, has recounted the subtle yet jarring microaggressions she regularly encounters, such as being handed an English menu when entering restaurants in Japan despite speaking the language perfectly. She recalled a specific searing memory from her youth when, after competing against a Japanese opponent, she overheard the girl and a friend discussing her in Japanese, completely unaware that she could understand them. When asked who she was playing, the opponent simply referred to her as that Black girl, prompting her friend to question whether she was even supposed to be Japanese. Such experiences reveal how deeply ingrained these exclusionary mindsets can be, leaving a young athlete to constantly fight against the persistent assumption that her appearance disqualifies her from claiming her true nationality. The feeling of being an isolated anomaly is echoed by fashion icon and businesswoman Kimora Lee Simmons, who grew up as a mixed-race girl with a Korean-Japanese mother and an African-American father. She found herself completely alone at school, compounded by the fact that she was nearly 6 feet tall by the time she was only 11 years old. The cruel taunts of her classmates, who targeted both her height and her heritage with derogatory names, resulted in endless tears and deep insecurity. It was only through the fierce guidance of her single mother, who encouraged her to transform those painful tears into something positive, that she entered the world of modeling, eventually catching the eye of legendary designer Karl Lagerfeld, who famously dubbed her the face of the 21st century. Her trajectory shows how the very traits used to isolate an individual in their youth can ultimately become the defining characteristics of their global success. The constant questioning of one's right to belong can make individuals feel as though they are permanently relegated to the outskirts of society. Actor Henry Golding, who is of English and Malaysian heritage, has articulated the profound internal question of whether a mixed-race individual is truly allowed to belong anywhere at all. He eventually arrived at the vital realization that a lack of full ancestral blood does not mean a person cannot completely own and celebrate their heritage, noting that he relates profoundly with his Asian side, despite the external skepticism he has faced. This sentiment is shared by actress Yara Shahidi, who is of Black and Iranian heritage. She has spoken about the difficult internal meter that society forces upon multiracial people, where they are constantly asked to measure exactly how Black or how Iranian they are, making it an exhausting challenge to feel as though both heritages can peacefully coexist within a single person. Even within the closest family units, the physical differences between parents and children can expose a young person to the harsh realities of societal confusion. Renowned actor and writer Keegan-Michael Key, who possesses Black, Polish, and Belgian Flemish heritage, has described the intense discomfort of his childhood school days when his mother, whom he described as a petite, ruddy white woman, would bring him lunch. The absolute lack of a predefined societal category for their relationship caused immediate, mocking reactions from his classmates, who would loudly declare that she could not possibly be his mother and question the way he spoke. For a child whose fundamental need is a life of comfort and predictable safety, these constant disruptions and taunts create an environment of permanent unease, highlighting how the world's inability to comprehend diversity can violently disrupt the fragile peace of a young mind trying desperately to fit in. The profound realization that identity cannot be dictated by the rigid boundaries of societal expectations has driven a powerful cultural revolution among global figures. Instead of hiding their multi-layered backgrounds, these individuals are actively stepping into the light, transforming their past vulnerabilities into massive platforms for global awareness. For Miss Universe Japan Ariana Miyamoto, who is of Black and Japanese heritage, entering the national pageant was not a pursuit of superficial vanity, but a radical act of protest. Driven by the tragic suicide of a close, mixed-race friend who had succumbed to the weight of racial prejudice, she entered the competition explicitly to combat discrimination. Despite facing an immense wave of public backlash and online abuse
regarding her skin color,
she stood firm, drawing deep motivation from her pain. Her victory marked a historic milestone, allowing her to deliver a powerful message of inclusion to a traditionally homogeneous society, proving that true nationality is found in one's heart and cultural respect rather than outward appearance. This profound internal strength often requires unlearning the defense mechanisms developed during childhood, where many multiracial individuals felt forced to code switch or mask their true selves. Musician J. Cole has reflected on how he would only become acutely aware of his mixed Black, Irish, German, English, and Scottish heritage when his white mother would pick him up from school, instantly fearing the inevitable teasing from his classmates. As an adult, he noted that while he can easily identify with and love his mother's side of the family, the reality of the world forces him to identify primarily with what he looks like, simply because that is how society treats him in everyday encounters. The artist Logic has echoed this sentiment, detailing how he faced immense internet criticism and skepticism regarding his race-related lyrics. Growing up with a Black father and a white mother who harbored deep racial prejudices, he experienced severe childhood trauma, ultimately declaring that no external voice has the right to measure his pain or tell him who he is allowed to be. The historical vocabulary used to categorize multiracial individuals has often been a source of deep-seated trauma, a reality that music icon Mariah Carey has confronted throughout her legendary career. Of Black and Irish heritage, she has recalled the agonizing childhood confusion of feeling like an isolated anomaly, using historical derogatory terms to describe how the world viewed her unique background. Similarly, singer Halsey has opened up about the deep complexities of being a white passing person of Black, Italian, Hungarian, and Irish heritage. She recalled childhood moments when strangers would approach her in parking lots to ask if she was safe while walking with her own Black father, assuming she was a victim of a crime. She has candidly acknowledged the undeniable societal privileges that come with looking white, while simultaneously processing the private tears of cultural disconnection and the subtle microaggressions that occur when waitresses assume she is the babysitter for her own family members. To bridge these painful gaps, some artists have taken it upon themselves to create the very frameworks they lacked during their own upbringing. Actor Avan Jogia utilized his Indian, English, and Irish heritage to publish an entire compilation of poetry and interviews focused entirely on the collective mixed-race experience. He discovered that regardless of the specific racial background, multiracial individuals around the world are fundamentally unified by the exact same emotional patterns and questions of self-identity. This safe space is something actress Tracy Ellis Ross has also explored, noting that while her famous parents provided an incredibly secure, protected home environment, the true ignition of identity always happens the moment a person pushes up against the boundaries of the external world. For R&B singer her childhood home was a vibrant fusion where her Filipino grandparents cooked traditional meals, while her black father introduced soul food during family gatherings, allowing her to proudly represent young black women while keeping her Asian traditions deeply alive. Even at the highest levels of global leadership and governance, these biographical elements play a monumental role in shaping perspective. Former President Barack Obama has reflected deeply on his multiracial heritage, noting that being raised by an African father and white grandparents from Kansas gave him a fundamentally different psychological framework. Because the white people closest to him loved him unconditionally, he was able to enter rooms filled with diverse communities, assuming an innate human connection rather than immediately anticipating hostility, using shared cultural touchstones to disarm skeptics. Conversely, filmmaker Taika Waititi has shared the starkly different realities of growing up half Maori and half Russian Jewish in New Zealand. Remembering how store owners would automatically treat him with suspicion and relegate him to the back of local businesses simply because of his indigenous features, proving that regional environments heavily dictate how diversity is perceived. The ultimate conclusion that unites all of these diverse narratives is that heritage is an absolute, immutable truth that cannot be measured by percentages or fractions. Actor Charles Melton has powerfully challenged the societal habit of measuring an individual's cultural authenticity, stating clearly that if a heritage runs through your blood, it is completely absolute. Singer Miguel has recounted how industry executives completely failed to comprehend the beautiful intersection of his Black and Mexican heritage, attempting to alter his image because they could not categorize his music. Actress Zendaya has used her immense platform to emphasize that America is an absolute melting pot where everyone originates from somewhere, emphasizing the vital importance of building deep pride in one's roots to foster respect for the backgrounds of others, while actively recognizing her privilege as a light-skinned woman in Hollywood. Ultimately, the stories of figures like Danny Pudi, Amandla Stenberg, Haley Kiyoko, Darren Criss, and Maya Rudolph remind us that the multiracial journey is an ongoing evolution. Whether it is navigating the rigid casting rooms of the film industry, enduring the cruel bullying of suburban schools like Halle Berry and Michael Yeoh, or honoring a complex ancestral legacy like KJ Apa and Jemaine Clement, these icons have rewritten the global narrative. They have proven that existing between two worlds is not a weakness, nor is it a space of permanent exile. It is an extraordinary superpower of cultural fluency, a beautiful fusion that enriches the human experience and forces the world to gradually discard its narrow compartments in favor of a much grander, more inclusive reality.